It's Charleston County versus the State Infrastructure Bank in regards to the future of 526. In this special edition of Quintin's Close-Ups, I sit down exclusively with Dana Beach of the Coastal Conservation League. Dana, good. It is so good to see you again.
Quintin, thank you. Always good to see you.
Likewise. Let me take it back to, I guess, yesterday. Vince Graham of the State Infrastructure Bank basically held a phone interview with the Coastal Conservation League. And just this past week, they actually canceled the meeting with Charleston County Council officials over the future of 526. And I'm wondering, as we sit here right now, Dana, why did they come to tell you their part of the story?
Well, we've been working with the county and this infrastructure bank to try to put together a resolution, a package of projects that the SIB will fund in Charleston County that will relieve congestion, advance mobility, promote better neighborhoods, that sort of thing. And we've spent a lot of time, and it's very detailed, you know, I mean, this is the way, there's no silver bullet for transportation. So the conversations that we've had, I think, led up to the logic that Vince Graham, the chairman, would give us a call, and Elliott Summy often calls us, although I have not heard from him yet on this.
And I'm wondering, if he does call, what do you want to hear from him?
Well, you know, I have to break some news to you.
Sure.
That you may not have heard, but we just literally heard within the last hour that the Elliott and John Tecklenburg, Mayor Tecklenburg, have sent a letter to the SIB releasing their plan, the secret plan, that's not secret anymore. That's in the letter. And what that plan envisions is that the State Infrastructure Bank Board will go back to their earlier position and give the $420 million to the county. That they will do that, the county will finish the environmental impact statement, the permitting, and that in return for, and the county also will pay to build overpasses in North Charleston from the half-cent sales tax.
Right.
Now, what's interesting about that is that project, the overpasses, were never mentioned in any public hearing or any meeting that was held about the half-cent sales tax.
Right.
So the county convened meetings. They said to the public, please come let us know what you think is important. They processed that. They put together a list. They passed an ordinance. And then unilaterally, apparently, Elliott has decided that he didn't really care what happened or what anybody thinks, but he is in fact going to simply unilaterally shift the money that the council voted on and by ordinance to something else. These are bridges in North Charleston.
Right.
So, you know, whether or not those are beneficial projects or not is a worthy conversation, but the most important part about it is that the public trust that has to exist when we enable a council to spend $2 billion of our funds simply is not there. There's no reason on earth that we should expect the council to be truthful with us about what they're going to spend the money on, whether it's on bus rapid transit or on road construction or on green space, because they have consistently over the past 9 months said one thing and then done the opposite. And this most recent one is the most obvious, where basically they developed a list with public input. They passed an ordinance saying they would spend the money on those projects that the public vetted. And now, again, one person, Elliott Summy, has said, well, we're actually not going to do that anymore. We're going to shift it to something else. So it's a slush fund.
That's what it is.
That's a slush fund,
Okay.
yeah.
And matter of fact, Graham also said this too, that, you know, Charleston County doesn't deserve really a dime from the state. When you hear that, what goes to your mind?
What Chairman Graham said, you know, it's interesting, the SIB, not to get into the minutiae of it, but the
Right.
State Infrastructure Bank has a very strange way of doing business. And I'll give you one example. They say they require a match from the local government sponsor.
Right.
And so they have done that in some cases, but in some cases, as in the case of Florence,
Right.
they haven't. In some cases, they require a match where the county puts money into the project itself, but in the case of Charleston County said, well, we spent $117 million on roads somewhere, that's our match. Well, the SIB said okay. Initially they said okay. More recently they've started to say we're not going to accept those kinds of matches anymore. They call them a soft match.
Right.
For spending money somewhere else and then saying, well, you owe us the money. And so I think that what Vince Graham was probably responding to was the fact that the Charleston County has not put a dime into this project yet, and does not seem to be concerned about having to ever do that. Now they're going to spend the money on these bridges, and that's part of the deal. To cut through all of this, you know, we're all sitting around here paying taxes and electing representatives. Meanwhile, in the back room, these guys are making deals right and left, and they change every day. I mean, this is only the latest permutation. It may not be the same thing that we see next week. So, again, governance and democracy is all about trust. If you cannot trust your leaders to do what they said they were going to do, to follow the protocols that have been laid out since 1776 for making decisions, then we have got a failed system. And that's where we are today.
Speaking of which, Mr. Graham also said that Charleston County really needs to take ownership of those roads. And I'm wondering, when do you think that'll happen?
Well, that's a big issue generally. One of the big problems we've got in the state is that the DOT owns so many roads that really ought to be owned by the county or the city.
Right.
That means that the county and city don't have any skin in the game, so to speak, and that means that we don't deal with these roads. We don't have authority over how they're managed. In other words, for example, the DOT can come in and cut trees down and say we have to do it, and the county doesn't have much say. But the other is that the county really needs to be responsible for the roads that are only related to county mobility. I mean, obviously, I-26 is a national
Right.
road.
Right.
US 17.
Yes.
Some of the big arterials, other arterials, 52 and others, are roads that the state does have a stake in because people move across county lines and up and down. But River Road on Johns Island is not. And that road, neither is Maybank Highway.
Right.
Those roads should be owned by and maintained by the county. And the county, actually the state is willing to make that transfer, and they give a certain amount of money when they do that. That's
Okay.
part of the deal. But perhaps it's not enough. But more importantly, the city and the county need to step up to the plate and aggressively negotiate to take the roads over. I mean, there's no reason we should be wards of the state in the road arena.
Yeah. And at the press conference, I believe yesterday, Mayor Tecklenburg basically said, hey, time is running out. And when I spoke with a high-level politician, he basically says, Charleston County needs more time. Where do you see this particular issue heading next?
Well, you know, I think we've talked about this in the past,
Right.
Quintin. My concern about this really is not that 526 will be built, that Johns Island will be more overrun by development than it already is, that marshes will be filled. that money will be wasted. That's not gonna happen. There are simply too many steps in the process of permitting, and there are too many other priorities in the state and in this region for that to practically ever evolve. So, and I'm willing to make a pretty definitive statement about that.
Okay.
But what it does do is it consumes the space of the civic conversation about where we should be as a region in transportation. It consumes the space that we could be talking about and enthusiastically supporting a bus rapid transit system, which would be transformative for our region. It consumes the space that we ought to be talking about better pedestrian facilities or safer bike lanes. It consumes the space that we ought to be talking about connecting roads in a way to give people travel options when they drive. It is the simplistic infantile, frankly, infantile fallback for people who simply don't want to engage at a mature level about what our future is in the region with respect to transportation. And it prevents us all from doing that. It's all comes back to I-526, and that it's so unfortunate. It's so unfortunate because there's never been a time in the last 50 years that we've needed solid, credible leadership more in this region than we do today. And the sad truth is we have no leadership of consequence. We have people who are deal makers. We have slush fund advocates. We have people who are one, I'll scratch your back if you scratch my back. We have people who are supporting road builders' desires rather than the needs of the community. And I guess I would just say that the most unfortunate and I would even say tragic thing about this is that unless we can turn this around, we're going to look back 20 years from now and say, what on earth were we thinking in 2016 when we didn't move forward on the bus rapid transit, when we didn't move forward on better and safer bike and pedestrian lanes. We created a community that cannot function except in an automobile, and automobiles ultimately, Atlanta shows this to us, come to gridlock no matter how many road miles we build. You've got to have different modes. People have to have choices. They have to have options. People who have less money than other people don't want to have to own a car or 2 cars or 3 cars if you have a family with driving age children. That's just not reasonable.
Yeah. Well, Dana Beach, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate this.
Certainly, Quintin. Always good to see you. Thank you for